So I wanted to connect the dot with judgment and the structure of judgment that we did last month. And I want to connect the dot to what the judgment pivots on, what makes it work and what therefore makes it fall apart. And so, and why key on judgment is because essentially suffering, unhappiness, largely comes from judgment, criticism, whether it's self-criticism, unhappiness with the world, unhappiness with others. It's a story. It's a story of criticism. It's an expression of rejection about ourselves, about something about ourselves, about somebody else. That expression of rejection we call it judgment. We experience that. There's a lot of talk, books, movies, law of attraction. You experience or you attract certain things into your world. Then you experience them. Okay. There's not enough said about law of expression or law of creation. We experience what we express. Take some anger, generate it, express it, you experience anger. Create gratitude, express gratitude, you feel gratitude. Love something, that expression of love is something you experience. So throughout the day, we're experiencing our expressions. But if our expressions are rejection in the form of a judgment and criticism, we're experiencing the emotional quality of rejection. We experience rejection every time we reject something. Oh man, that's an ugly paint job on that house. I'm expressing a rejection. I'm experiencing it. I say it's about the house and the paint job or XYZ or that person or my hair. But the experience, the emotional experience is going on inside of us about the thing we're talking about outside. And so this is where most of our unhappiness is generated, is in those expressions of rejection or judgment, called judgment. It was profound to me in the subtle ways Miguel's conversations or side comments or questions he answered. I never heard him criticize anything or anybody. Now, that didn't mean he didn't make an assessment. Okay, I was with him in Texas. He was doing a book tour, and I was traveling him and his business manager and a friend of ours, a student also. And he'd given this talk, a few hundred people, on the about the Four Agreements book. He was actually given a talk about the voice of knowledge. So he'd given all the talks on that book, which then were going to be transcribed into the book. So he was doing that on his Four Agreements tour. It was funny, people were upset that he didn't talk about the Four Agreements. I'm like, well, I already wrote that book, read that book. I want to talk about this. And driving back to, we're getting dinner after or something like that. He's like, oh my God, that was a terrible talk. I give like the worst talk. And now Miguel's standard for delivery is pretty darn high. So, you know, business manager friend of ours, she's like, Miguel, you were great. You were great. It's fine. Don't be so hard on yourself. And he's like, oh no, he said that talk. And she's like, no, Miguel, don't judge yourself. And I go, hey, I don't think he's judging himself. I think he's just assessing the talk. So there's this line between this discernment. Am I hitting the mark? If an archer is shooting an arrow and he misses the bullseye and he misses the target, he goes, I completely missed the target. And then there's the quality of emotion or how you feel about yourself when you say that, which is, oh my God, I just totally missed the target. And it's funny and it's joyful. It's, oh my God, I totally missed the target. It's not in the words, same words. But one is a self-rejection. Oh God, I missed the target. I'm expressing this disgust, feeling like a loser. Or, Daniel, did you see that? I totally missed the target. Fun, enjoyment, love for myself, love for this play and the results. Okay. So I can love myself or I can reject myself. And so you have to look at the real message, which is not the words, not the ideas, but the meaning layered into these concepts. What does it mean to miss the target? Does it mean, oh my God, it's so funny? Does it mean I'm a loser, I'm a failure, I should just give up and quit, I'll never get this? I hate myself. That meaning can be in either statement. So the rejection is hidden behind what people say. Or the love is hidden. And Miguel is like, oh my God, I gave a terrible talk. I didn't hear any rejection of himself. It was just an assessment of what he did that night. Again, so we get to tone, we get to feeling, get to body language, facial expressions. I mean, this is 93% of communication. What's the meaning? How do you feel? How do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about that thing you're talking about? Okay. So there's the meaning. And then what's the sub story in the tone? Okay, I'm a loser. I should just give up and never even try again. Or I love myself about missing the target. And then there is, well, with I love myself. Yeah, I missed the target. Great. I love myself and I missed the target. There's not much depth to that. It's pretty simple. I just love myself and I missed the target. There's not more to the story. There's not more hidden layers. But over in the rejection camp of expression, there's more layers. I missed the target. I'm a loser. I'm a failure. I should quit. I'll never get it. This is a story about the future. How do I feel about myself? Is there a memory? Oh my God, I fail at everything. I fail at everything. That's implied that we're looking at our past, taking an inventory of everything, when it's actually probably more layered. Certain things I failed at. It's not looking at everything. It's just exaggerating certain selective things we haven't done well at and said, that's everything. And I fail at it. So here's hidden layers of the story. And then there's another layer. We'll go a little deeper into this stack of what is rejection made out of. And that is, if I fail at something, if I fail to hit the target, I fail to make my point, I fail to keep up with my homework. That implies something that's not said, that's also a little more hidden, which is there's some version of success. There's some version of this is what hitting the target would have been. This would have been the bullseye. What is a great talk? What is it for our body to be perfect, our hair to be perfect, our presentation to be perfect, to do XYZ well with a client? And that's not spoken. There is a commentary about failing. That was a terrible talk I gave. But that assumes that there was a version in our imagination, somewhere in a file drawer of comparison, that this is a standard of what a great talk would have been. And there's a bit of a surprise when you dig into that layer deeper. What makes that standard great? And very often is very surprising, because the standard is ridiculous. Who here has done the inventory on that image of perfection in the self-mastery tool? So I tell the story there of a guy who wanted to date this girl and was thinking, yeah, she probably wouldn't be out with me, and it's not really, good enough for her. And so I said, so do you hear rejection in that? I hope so. And she's up here, I'm down here. That's rejection, comparison. I'm less than. And then I said, well, what would you have to be good enough for her? You're saying, or feel good enough for yourself. And so we started to interview the judge. And the judge, long story short, he needed to have a whole lot more money. How much money? More money than Bill Gates. I said, would then you be good enough? He's like, no, I need to be a philanthropist. If I was just had a lot of money, that would be greedy, and I need to give away money, so that I'm this is moral case for himself of what he needs to be in order to be good. He needs to be charitable. How much money you need to give away? More money than Bill Gates. Okay. And would then you be good enough? He's like, no, need to kind of be an outdoorsman. He says, I hunt and fish, but it's not really rugged enough. I need to be a real man, and that real man is, you need to climb mountains. And so I asked him, like the 14,000 foot peaks in Colorado. He's like, no. I said, Everest. He's like, no, but maybe K2. And I'm like, okay, if you climb K2, you're a real outdoors man, and will you be good enough? He's like, no, I need to do it. And turns out in record time, according to his judge. And okay, along with professional baseball player, Major League, Detroit Tigers, and I think center field for 9 years in an All-Star. They need to win a World Series, but 9 years like an All-Star, like very specific. And President of the United States. I said, 1 term or 2? He says, 1. And I said, do you need to do anything special while you're president? Do you need to fix Social Security or balance the budget or stop a war? He's like, no, I just need to be the best president ever. Okay. And so to be good enough, he has to be the best president ever. I said, so how do you know you need to be the best president ever? And he's like, because I can feel my mom telling me I could. And it was like this flash of a memory. He's in 5th grade and he's studying, who are the presidents and what are the requirements to be president. He probably asked his mom, could I be president? And she said, of course, and you'd be the best president ever. And what might that beautiful suggestion of encouragement be to him? An image in his mind. I could be president and mom's going to love me if I'm president. And that's equated to being loved. This image in my mind, that'll be good enough. I'll be loved. So our memory, what that tells me is our memory in these stories of our little instances over years and years collects many of these little moments, catalogs them, inventories them, and builds many little stories of perfection of this is what our standard is, that our judge then says, oh, to be good enough, you need to be that. And since you're not that, you're less than, and I reject you for not being as good as this memory, this moment I have a snapshot of what is perfect. And this little snapshot of what would be perfect is what essentially the whole judge story pivots on. It says, here's my image of perfection. I'm going to compare you in reality against that. Okay, so I gave a talk and it wasn't the greatest thing. Oh, I'm sitting here with this camera and I've got it on my lap, and it's moving around. Oh, this is terrible. I really screwed up this call because, my picture's jostling around, right, when I move. Oh, that's not meeting my perfect call standard. And now, instead of it just going, oh, the picture's jostling around. That might be a little bothersome. Like, oh, I'm ruining the call. I'm screwing this up. No failure. So we go from here's the assessment to levering where's perfection and basically casting our shadow an equal length out from wherever our perfection lever is. If I make perfection, just like, yeah, it's okay. Perfect is let's just do a good call and it's, not worry about, oh, it's jostling around. That's a little bit of a problem. My standard's a little off, then I maybe only feel a little rejection. If I'm like, okay, the light's got to be here, sound has got to be here, and I'm missing my good studio microphone, and I'm not having you know, switching between single shot for the recording for people. It's like, there's all the things I could judge as perfect class here. Oh, I missed the mark. I did this. The more my standards in the ridiculous, detail, the more difference there is between these 2 points, then the further I'm cast, I bounce into rejection. There's more problems, more ways I'm failing, I'm doing a terrible job. You see, judgment exists as a story of comparisons. And this judge is levering the image of perfection against reality to build a story of this is less than. And it's peculiar how we do this. So if you want to dissolve the judge, the key ingredient is you dissolve this image of perfection or expectation. Because it's part of the demon, the perfection demon, that the judge is using. And when you take it away, you let go of this perfection. Now, the judge has nothing to compare against. And therefore, he has no basis for the story. Okay. And when the client inventoried his present story, more money in Bill Gates and Major League Baseball player and climbing K2, and I don't know what else was on there. He saw it all in the paper because I had him write it down in detail what these things were. And he's laughing. He's like, this is ridiculous. Not only is this like any one of these things, you know, ridiculous, but to have all 5 or 6, whatever it was. He's like, he saw that what the judge was using to tell the story is not good enough about himself was ridiculous. And anything the judge had to say about him, about being not good enough, he could see the layer behind it of what the judge was using as a standard. And he's like, judge, you got no credibility. You're foolish. Because what he's saying is, you know, if we use that standard, no human being in the world is good enough. Because he didn't meet it and nobody else met it either. Elon Musk, not good enough. Our presidents aren't even good enough because none of them are the best president ever. So the target that's impossible to hit is not a good target. The fear, the resistance that the judge will claim is that, no, if we let go of our standards, we won't try, we won't do a good job, we will just become a slug, a bum, no effort, no motivation. The assumption is that this judge is the one motivating us, it's the one driving us to make and do anything and everything. And then it's this story the judge uses as a whip to create pain and rejection, emotional pain. And that is the only thing that we can be motivated by. And then if we take away this painful motivator, well, then we won't do anything. Well, that story falls apart when you say, who is it that won't do anything? Who does the judge think and believe is the failure and it's not good enough, it's terrible and needs that? He will say the victim. The victim being all the past versions of ourselves that didn't meet the mark, that failed. There's an image of our worst version of ourselves. Not what we are, not even our worst version of ourselves, an image of the worst version of ourselves that the judge has, and that is the one that's punished, sends all that anger, criticism, rejection stories too, and feels all the pain. Now, we may identify with it and feel like the judge judging us, or when we get clarity, we're the observer of it. And we see that that judge thinks that we will become that worst version of ourselves without it. And actually very likely doesn't even see us as a present human being in present time. He sees this historical image and say, we'll become that, because he lives in this little bubble world of delusion, right? So to be willing to let go of this image of the perfection means I'm going to let go of this judgment routine that's been the painful motivator. How the judge stays in trying to convince us that we need him and says we'll become that guy or that woman that's terrible. And the answer is no, you won't. Because, I mean, is it true that the only motivation we ever have in our life is painful? I mean, it's simple enough. It's like, if we're hungry, aren't we isn't hunger a motivator to go get food? And if we need to pay the rent or the mortgage, is it a motivator to like, well, I'm going to do my job because I don't want to be on the street? Like, there's certain consequences. We can just look at it as assessment and go, I want to pay my utility bill, so I have heat and electricity and air conditioning. Keep the lights on. Like, we can just look at the consequences and go, yeah, paying the bill is worth it. Going to work's worth it. And we can do that assessment without putting ourselves in pain or having the judge put the victim character in pain. Okay, so some of this just becomes common sense, like, yeah, I'm going to do that. Okay. So the protest you often see from letting go of perfection, which is dismantling I think it was the soapbox the judge stands on, is that we'll do nothing, and this is also false. Okay. Does this make sense? You with me? And is it clear how the image of perfection is kind of the fuel that drives the judge, or one of the key ingredients into that?